A paralyzed puppy had minutes left to live, but what the X-ray revealed shocked everyone. A young vet tech is told to end its life, but in one split second, she sees something no one else noticed. Against orders, she fights to give the puppy a chance. And that decision uncovers a secret far darker than anyone imagined. Why would a tiny dog carry not one, but 2 microchips? And who would go so far to keep the truth buried? As danger closes in and the clock runs out, one question remains. Can courage and compassion expose a hidden cruelty, or will the cost of saving one life destroy everything? This channel isn't just about stories. It's about holding on to what still matters: empathy, truth, love, and the courage to care. The morning sun barely penetrated the concrete walls of the county shelter's intake room as Rhea Cullum watched, Cal Voss carrying a small crate. Her heart sank at the sight. Morning deliveries usually meant difficult decisions ahead. The animal control officer's weathered face was grimmer than usual as he set the crate down carefully on the metal exam table. "Found this one at the edge of town," Cal said quietly, his uniform dusted with dirt from his early morning rounds. "Hind legs aren't working. Tagged as Z1. Rhea knelt beside the crate, peering through the wire door. Inside, a small golden retriever mix puppy lay still, its back legs splayed at odd angles. But what caught her attention wasn't the obvious paralysis. It was the puppy's eyes. They were alert, tracking her movement with an intensity that made her pause. "Dr. Pike wants immediate euthanasia," Cal added, his voice heavy with reluctance. "Standard protocol for severe cases." The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Rhea carefully opened the crate. The puppy, Z1, didn't struggle as she gently lifted it onto the exam table. Its fur was soft and clean despite its condition, suggesting it had been cared for recently. "Poor little thing," she murmured, running, her hands carefully along its spine. That's when she felt it, the slightest twitch in the puppy's back leg. Most people would have missed it, but Rhea's farm background had taught her to notice the smallest signs of life. The door swung open, and Dr. Cordell Pike strode in, his stained lab coat flapping. "Ah, the morning delivery. Let's make this quick. We're full up today." He grabbed a form from the wall clipboard, already reaching for his pen. "Dr. Pike," Rhea said, straightening up, "I'd like to do an X-ray first." The shelter director paused, looking at her over his reading glasses. "That's not necessary. The paralysis is obvious, and we don't waste resources on hopeless cases." Rhea felt her face flush, but she stood her ground. "I felt movement in the leg. Just a twitch, but—" "Miss Cullum," Pike cut her off. "You're new here. Trust me, I've seen hundreds of cases like this. The kindest thing we can do is end its suffering quickly." He reached for the cabinet where they kept the euthanasia drugs. "Sir," Cal spoke up from his position by the door, "maybe we should listen to Rhea. What's the harm in one X-ray?" Pike's face reddened. "The harm, Officer Voss, is in establishing bad precedents. We have procedures for a reason." But Rhea wasn't backing down. She looked down at the puppy who was still watching her with those bright, determined eyes. "Something's not right here. This puppy is alert, responsive. The paralysis might be temporary or treatable. We owe it to her to at least check." "Her?" Pike asked sharply. "Yes," Rhea said, checking quickly. "She's a female, maybe 4 months old. And she deserves a chance." The room fell silent except for the soft whir of the ventilation system. Pike's jaw worked as he looked from Rhea to Cal, who had moved slightly closer to the exam table in silent support. Finally, the director threw up his hands. "Fine, one X-ray. But when it confirms what I already know, we proceed with protocol. And Miss Cullum," he pointed a finger at her, "this comes out of your break time." Rhea nodded, already gathering the puppy in her arms. "Thank you, sir." As Pike stormed out, Cal helped her prepare for the X-ray. "That was brave," he said quietly. Not many people stand up to Pike on their first month. I couldn't help it, Rhea replied, carefully positioning the puppy on the X-ray table. There's something about her. She's not ready to give up, so neither am I. The puppy, Rhea had already started thinking of her as Zinnia, after the tough little flowers that grew on her family's farm, remained calm as they took the images. Her eyes never left Rhea's face, as if she understood that this moment might determine her fate. Rhea felt the weight of that trust as she waited for the X-rays to develop. She had risked her position, challenged her superior, and broken the usual protocol. All for a puppy. Others had already written off. But as she looked down at those determined eyes once more, she knew she had made the right choice. This wasn't just about one paralyzed puppy anymore. It was about standing up for what was right, about seeing the fight for life where others saw only defeat. As the X-ray images slowly emerged, Rhea silently promised Zinnia that this would only be the beginning of her fight for survival. Cal stood beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. Whatever those X-rays show, he said softly, you did the right thing. Sometimes that's all we can do, give them a fighting chance. Rhea nodded, her throat tight with emotion. She had taken her first stand, chosen to see hope where others saw hopelessness. As she waited for the X-rays to tell their story, she knew that this moment would change everything, for her, for the shelter, and most importantly, for the brave little puppy who refused to give up. The X-ray machine hummed softly as the images processed. Rhea held her breath, her fingers drumming nervously against the metal examination table. Cal stood beside her, his experienced eyes scanning each image as it appeared on the screen. Suddenly, Cal leaned forward, his brow furrowing. Wait a minute. That's not right. Rhea moved closer to the monitor, squinting at the ghostly images of Zinnia's spine and shoulders. What do you see? There. Cal pointed to a small white dot near the puppy's shoulder. That's a microchip. Standard placement. His finger moved to another spot, this one dangerously close to the spine. But what's this? Rhea's eyes widened. Another chip? That's impossible. She zoomed in on the image, her heart racing. The second chip was clearly visible, pressing against the delicate nerve bundles that controlled the puppy's back legs. No wonder she can't walk. The chip is compressing her spinal nerves. I've never seen anything like this in 15 years on the job, Cal said, his voice low and concerned. One chip, sure, but two? And one placed so carelessly? Rhea quickly pulled up the first chip's registration on the computer. The information popped up immediately. Registered to Harland Griggs Kennels. She frowned. Harland Griggs? The big-shot breeder who's always in the papers donating to animal causes? The very same, Cal replied, his expression darkening. His kennels produce some of the most expensive puppies in the state. He's got quite a reputation. Rhea stroked Zinnia's head, her mind racing. Why would anyone chip a puppy twice? And why put the second one in such a dangerous spot? Good question. Cal crossed his arms, studying the image again. And an even better question is why a prize breeder's puppy ended up in our shelter marked for euthanasia. The implications made Rhea's stomach turn. She looked down at Zinnia, who wagged her tail weakly, still watching her with those trusting eyes. This wasn't an accident, she said quietly. Nobody makes a mistake like this. That second chip was placed there deliberately. Careful, Cal warned, glancing toward the door. Those are serious accusations, especially against someone like Griggs. He's got friends in high places. But we have proof right here, Rhea gestured at the X-ray. The chip placement, the paralysis, it's all connected. Someone wanted this puppy to look like a lost cause. Cal ran a hand through his hair, clearly, troubled. Look, I believe you, but we need to be smart about this. Griggs has an army of lawyers and more money than God. We can't just go accusing him without solid evidence. Rhea nodded, her jaw set with determination. Then we'll get evidence. First, we need to document everything. She grabbed her phone and started taking pictures of the X-rays. And we need to save this puppy. If we can remove that second chip. Whoa, slow down, Cal said, though his eyes showed a hint of admiration. One step at a time. First, we need to convince Pike not to euthanize her. That's going to be a battle in itself. As if on cue, they heard footsteps approaching the X-ray room. Rhea quickly saved the photos and straightened up. We have to try, she whispered. Whatever's going on here, Zinnia's the proof. We can't let them destroy her. Pike burst through the door, looking impatient. Well, can we proceed with protocol now? Rhea took a deep breath, gathering her courage. Actually, sir, we found something unusual. She pointed to the X-ray. There are 2 microchips. The second one is pressing on her spinal nerves. That's what's causing the paralysis. If we remove it, she might recover completely. Pike leaned in, adjusting his glasses. His expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. 2 chips? That's... He trailed off, studying the image more closely. The first one's registered to Harland Griggs Kennels, Cal added, his tone carefully, neutral. Pike's head snapped up at the name, and something flickered across his face. Concern. Fear? Before he composed himself. This is irregular. I'll need to make some calls. Sir? Rhea pressed, sensing an opportunity. Since this is clearly not a typical case, could we hold off on any decisions? At least until we understand what's going on? Pike hesitated, looking from the X-ray to Zinnia to Rhea. Finally, he sighed. 24 hours. After that, we follow procedure. He turned to leave, then stopped at the door. And keep this quiet for now. No need to complicate things. After he left, Rhea and Cal exchanged meaningful looks. Pike's reaction had only confirmed their suspicions. Something was very wrong here. 24 hours, Rhea said, gently lifting Zinnia from the examination table. It's not much time, but it's a start. Be careful, Cal warned again, but his voice was kind. Whatever's going on here, it's bigger than just one puppy. Rhea cradled Zinnia close, feeling the puppy's heart beating steadily against her chest. I know, but sometimes one puppy is enough reason to fight. She looked down at the X-ray one more time, the 2 stark white chips standing as evidence of something dark and deliberate. Someone wanted her to die without anyone asking questions. They didn't count on anyone looking closer. The discovery of the double chips had changed everything. What had started as a simple act of compassion had unveiled something far more sinister. As Rhea prepared a kennel for Zinnia, she knew they had stumbled onto something dangerous, but also that they couldn't turn back now. The truth behind those 2 chips could expose whatever darkness lurked behind Harland Griggs's charitable facade, but first, they had to keep Zinnia alive long enough to uncover it. The door to the examination room burst open, making Rhea jump. Dr. Pike stormed in, his face flushed red with anger, lab coat flapping behind him like an agitated flag. What is the meaning of this? He demanded, jabbing a finger at the X-ray screen. I gave you direct orders to euthanize this animal. Instead, I find you wasting valuable resources and time. Rhea stood her ground, though her heart hammered in her chest. Dr. Pike, look at these images. There are 2 microchips and one is causing the paralysis. This wasn't an accident. I don't care if there are 10 chips, Pike's voice echoed off the sterile walls. You deliberately disobeyed a direct order. You're suspended, effective immediately. Clear out your locker. Cal stepped forward, his steady presence like a shield. Sir, we can't ignore this. Something's very wrong here. Before Pike could respond, the examination room door opened again. A tall man in an expensive suit entered, followed by 2 others carrying briefcases. His polished appearance seemed out of place in the humble shelter setting. I'm Gerald Winston, legal representative for Harland Griggs Kennels, he announced smoothly, pulling documents from his leather briefcase. We're here to claim our property. Pike's demeanor changed instantly, becoming almost deferential. "Of course, Mr. Winston. We were just preparing to handle the situation according to protocol." Winston laid the papers on the metal exam table. "These documents confirm full ownership rights of the animal in question. Mr. Griggs has authorized immediate disposal of defective breeding stock." Rhea felt sick to her stomach. "Defective breeding stock? She's a living creature." "Miss Cullum," Pike warned, "you're already suspended. Don't make this worse for yourself." Cal moved closer to the examination table where Zinnia lay, his body language protective. The puppy wagged her tail weakly, unaware of the battle being fought over her fate. Winston smiled thinly. "Everything is quite legal, I assure you. The shelter has a standing agreement with Griggs Kennels regarding the handling of their animals." Rhea looked from Pike to Winston, suddenly understanding. The director's quick compliance, the immediate appearance of Griggs's lawyer, this was a system designed to hide something terrible. "Cal," she whispered, making a split-second decision. "Remember Dr. Ames? The one who saved that horse everyone said was hopeless?" He nodded almost imperceptibly, catching her meaning instantly. While Pike and Winston discussed paperwork, Rhea casually moved toward the caged area where they kept medical supplies. In one smooth motion, she grabbed a transport carrier and some blankets. "This is your final warning," Pike called out. "Leave now, or I'll have security remove you." "I'm just getting my personal items," Rhea said, her heart racing as she quickly wrapped Zinnia in a blanket. The puppy stayed perfectly quiet, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. Cal positioned himself between her and the others, casually leaning against the doorframe. "Dr. Pike, maybe we should discuss the shelter's relationship with Griggs Kennels. Seems like something the board might be interested in." Pike's face paled slightly. Winston's smile turned cold. "That would be ill-advised, Officer Voss." In those few seconds of distraction, Rhea managed to secure Zinnia in the carrier. With practiced efficiency from years of handling animals, she slipped out the side door that led to the shelter's service entrance. Cal backed away slowly. "I think I'm coming down with something. Probably need to take a sick day." He followed Rhea's path, leaving Pike spluttering and Winston reaching for his phone. They met at Cal's truck, parked in the back lot. Rhea's hands shook as she secured the carrier in the back seat. "Dr. Ames's clinic is 40 minutes north," Cal said, starting the engine. "She's usually there late working on her research." Rhea nodded, watching the shelter recede in the side mirror. "I just threw away my job, didn't I?" "We both did," Cal replied, but there was no regret in his voice. Sometimes doing the right thing costs something. They drove in tense silence, taking back roads to avoid main highways. Rhea kept checking on Zinnia, who remained remarkably calm throughout the journey. The sun was setting when they finally pulled up to a weathered barn that had been converted into a veterinary clinic. Dr. Loretta Ames was indeed still there, her truck the only vehicle in the gravel parking lot. She met them at the door, her sharp eyes taking in their worried expressions and the carrier between them. "Must be something special to bring you out here this late," she said, leading them inside. Rhea quickly explained the situation while Cal gently lifted Zinnia onto the examination table. Dr. Ames studied the x-rays they'd brought, her lined face growing serious. "Microchip pressing on the spinal nerves," she muttered, probing gently along Zinnia's back. "Tricky location. Most would say it's too risky to remove." "But you're not most people," Cal said quietly. Dr. Ames smiled slightly. "No, I'm not. And, this little one deserves a chance." She looked at them both carefully. "You realize what you've done? Griggs has influence everywhere. This won't end here." Rhea stroked Zinnia's soft head, watching those determined eyes that had first caught her attention. "We know, but we couldn't let her die just to hide someone's secrets." "Good answer." Dr. Ames began gathering surgical supplies. "I can't promise anything, but I'll do my best. You two should leave. Gives you deniability about what happens next." We'll find a safe place for her, Cal assured her, once she's recovered. As they walked back to the truck, Rhea glanced over her shoulder at the clinic. Through the window, she could see Dr. Ames preparing for surgery, her movements precise and confident. Zinnia was in good hands. "What do we do now?" she asked Cal, as they climbed into his truck. "We wait," he replied, starting the engine. "And we hope that doing the right thing turns out to be worth it." The gravel crunched under the tires as they pulled away, leaving behind a small puppy whose life had somehow become the key to exposing something much bigger than they'd imagined. Dr. Loretta Ames stood over the small operating table, her sharp eyes focused intently on the X-ray images mounted on the light board. The barn-turned surgical suite was immaculate despite its rustic setting, every instrument gleaming under the bright surgical lights. "This chip placement is no accident," she muttered, tracing the outline of the foreign object near Zinnia's spine. Someone knew exactly what they were doing. Rhea watched anxiously from the corner, her hands clasped tight. Cal's steady presence beside her offered silent support as Dr. Ames began the delicate procedure. "The chip is pressing directly on the nerve bundle," Dr. Ames explained as she worked. "One wrong move and we could cause permanent damage." Her skilled hands moved with precision, making careful incisions through layers of tissue. Hours ticked by. Sweat beaded on Dr. Ames's forehead as she manipulated tiny surgical tools. The only sounds were the steady beep of monitoring equipment and the soft whir of the ventilation system. Finally, with practiced care, she extracted a small glass cylinder. "Got it," she announced, dropping the chip into a metal dish with a sharp ping. "Now we'll see if removing the pressure allows those nerves to recover." Rhea leaned forward, heart pounding. Will she be able to walk again? Time will tell. The damage wasn't permanent, but recovery won't be instant. Dr. Ames began closing the incision with tiny, precise stitches. They moved Zinnia to a recovery kennel, where Rhea maintained a constant vigil. Hours passed as the anesthesia wore off. The puppy's eyes fluttered open, groggy but alert. "Hey there, sweet girl," Rhea whispered, gently stroking Zinnia's head. The puppy's tail gave a weak thump against the blanket. Then something remarkable happened. Zinnia's back leg twitched, not the random spasms from before, but a deliberate movement. Rhea gasped. "Cal, did you see that?" She pointed as Zinnia flexed her paw again. Cal broke into a broad smile. "She's getting feeling back already." "You were right all along, Rhea," Dr. Ames observed from the doorway, nodding with satisfaction. "The nerves are responding. With physical therapy, she should regain full mobility." Their celebration was short-lived. Cal's phone buzzed with an urgent message. His expression darkened as he read it. "Griggs isn't taking this lying down," he said grimly. "He's filed theft charges against both of us. Claims we stole valuable breeding stock." Rhea's stomach clenched. "He can't do that. The shelter had custody." "He's got friends in high places." Cal cut in. "The police chief just called me in for a disciplinary hearing tomorrow. They're threatening to take my badge." "No," Rhea breathed. "Cal, I'm so sorry. I never meant to drag you into this." "Hey." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "I knew what I was risking. This was the right thing to do." Dr. Ames joined them, her face serious. "It gets worse. Pike's pushing for criminal charges against you, Rhea. Griggs is behind it, using his influence to make an example of anyone who crosses him." Rhea sank onto a nearby stool, the weight of consequences settling heavily on her shoulders. Her career, her reputation, possibly even her freedom, all on the line. And now Cal's career was in jeopardy too. "What do we do now?" she asked quietly. Cal's jaw set with determination. "We fight back. That second chip is evidence of something bigger. Griggs wouldn't go to these lengths unless he's hiding something serious." "He's right," Dr. Ames agreed. "I've seen a lot of questionable breeding practices, but this goes beyond that. Double chipping to paralyzed defective puppies? There's a bigger story here." Zinnia whimpered softly from her kennel, drawing Rhea's attention. The puppy's eyes held that same determined spark she'd noticed on day one. Those eyes had started all this, made her question, made her fight. "We can't back down now," Rhea said firmly, even as fear churned in her stomach. "Whatever Griggs throws at us, we have to expose the truth." Cal nodded, his expression grim but resolved. "I'll start making calls to some contacts, see what else we can dig up about Griggs's operation. And I'll document everything about Zinnia's case," Dr. Ames added. "Medical evidence will be crucial." Rhea reached through the kennel bars to scratch Zinnia's ears. The puppy's tail wagged harder, her back legs moving with growing strength. Such a small creature, yet she'd set in motion something that couldn't be stopped, a stand against cruelty that would either bring justice or cost them everything. The charges against them were serious. Their careers hung by threads. But watching Zinnia fight to recover, seeing the proof that they'd been right to trust their instincts, Rhea knew they couldn't give up. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The bright fluorescent lights of the clinic's back office cast harsh shadows as Rhea and Cal hunched over stacks of paperwork spread across a folding table. Their impromptu investigation headquarters consisted of borrowed file boxes and hastily printed records, the fruits of Cal's connections at animal control. "Look at this," Rhea said, pushing a document toward Cal. Her finger traced down a column of numbers. "These are all chip registration batches from Griggs's kennel over the past 3 years. Cal leaned in, his weathered face creased with concentration. "And these matching numbers here?" He pointed to a separate spreadsheet. "Those are the disposal records, puppies marked as failing health checks," Rhea's voice caught. "But look at the dates. Every single one of these puppies was chipped twice before being marked for euthanasia." "Just like Zinnia," Cal murmured, running a hand through his graying hair. Rhea nodded, spreading out more papers. "I started looking at the naming system. Z1 wasn't just some random code. See these other entries? D1, M1, R1, they're all followed by words like defect or cull." Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged the documents. "He's been systematically marking entire litters." Cal pulled up another file on his laptop. "Cross-referencing with the kennel's show records," his voice hardened. "Every time he culled a defect litter, his next show batch won ribbons. He's been breeding hundreds of puppies and eliminating any that don't meet his standards. But the double chipping. Why?" Rhea wondered aloud, though the sick feeling in her stomach told her she already knew. "Control," Cal said grimly. "The first chip establishes ownership. The second," he gestured to their notes about Zinnia's surgery, "insurance. If any pup marked for disposal somehow survived, that second chip would eventually paralyze them. No evidence left walking around." Rhea's face paled as the full scope of their discovery sank in. "This isn't just about hiding a few rejected puppies. This is his whole business model." She shuffled through more papers, connecting more dots. "Look at his donation records. Every time there's a major cull, he makes a huge public gift to animal charities." "Covering his tracks with good PR," Cal agreed. "Building his reputation as a champion breeder and philanthropist while systematically destroying any animal that might damage that image." They worked through the night, piecing together years of carefully hidden cruelty. The pattern was undeniable. Griggs hadn't just gotten lucky with his prize-winning bloodlines. He'd engineered them through brutal culling, using the double-chip method to ensure no mistakes could come back to haunt him. "All these puppies," Rhea whispered, looking at the rows of coded entries. Each one was like Zinnia. Each one had a chance, if someone had just looked closer. Cal placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "You did look closer, that's why we're here, and now we have proof of what he's been doing." Rhea stared at the damning evidence they'd gathered. "This isn't just about saving one puppy anymore, is it?" "No," Cal agreed solemnly. "This is about exposing a system that's been running unchecked for years. Griggs's entire operation is built on this. The prestigious bloodlines, the show wins, the charitable reputation, it's all founded on cruelty. They carefully organized their findings: registration records, disposal logs, surgical reports, and the telling pattern of charitable donations that followed each mass culling. The truth lay exposed in black and white, a paper trail of systematic abuse hidden behind wealth and influence. "He'll fight back hard," Cal warned, helping Rhea collect their evidence into secure folders. "Everything he's built depends on keeping this quiet." "I know," Rhea said, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. "But every puppy in these records deserved what we gave Zinnia, a chance to live. We have to make this right." As dawn began to creep through the office windows, they surveyed their work, proof of a conspiracy that went far beyond one paralyzed puppy. They had uncovered a ruthless operation that treated lives as disposable in pursuit of profit and prestige. The fight ahead would be difficult, but they finally had the evidence to expose the truth behind Harland Griggs's carefully crafted facade. "Those are the disposal records. Puppies marked as defective," Rhea explained, her voice tight with barely contained anger. "Every single one of these Z-coded entries matches up with double-chipped animals. Zinnia wasn't a mistake. She was part of a system." Cal's jaw clenched as he studied the damning pattern before them. "We need to take this to Pike. Make him face what he's been enabling." Minutes later, they strode purposefully down the shelter's main corridor, their footsteps echoing against the concrete floors. They found Dr. Pike in his office, hunched over his computer with his perpetually stained lab coat hanging loosely from his shoulders. "Dr. Pike," Rhea announced, dropping the stack of evidence onto his desk. "We need to talk about Harland Griggs's breeding operation." Pike's face went pale as he glanced at the top sheet. "I don't know what you think you found, but we know about the double chipping," Cal cut in, his voice steady and firm. "And the coded euthanasia records." Sweat beaded on Pike's forehead as his eyes darted between them. The weight of his guilty conscience seemed to physically press him down in his chair. "You don't understand," he stammered. "Griggs, he has connections. The shelter needs his donations." "How much?" Rhea demanded. "How much does he pay you to look the other way while he kills perfectly healthy puppies?" Pike's resistance crumbled. $200 per rush disposal. No questions asked. His voice quivered. "He calls them returns, says they're aggressive or sick, but the real reason is they're just not perfect enough for his premium brand." "And you just went along with it?" The disgust in Rhea's voice was palpable. "The shelter needs money. You don't know what it's like trying to keep this place running on county budgets." Pike's attempted justification rang hollow even to his own ears. Cal stepped forward, looming over the desk. "The X-rays, where are they?" "Records room. But please," Pike pleaded, "you don't know what Griggs is capable of." As if suddenly realizing the danger, Pike scrambled for his phone. His trembling fingers punched in a number. "Mr. Griggs, we have a situation." Rhea lunged for the phone, but Pike turned away. "The X-rays! They're going to expose everything!" He hissed into the receiver before Rhea could snatch it away. "You coward!" she spat. The night settled heavy and dark over the shelter. Most staff had gone home, leaving only the overnight kennel attendant and the quiet rustle of sleeping animals. Cal, who had insisted on staying late, was making his final rounds when he noticed a shadow move near the back entrance. His military training kicked in as he silently tracked the intruders, 3 men in dark clothing, moving with purpose toward the records room. The smell hit him first. "Gasoline! Stop right there!" Cal's voice boomed through the corridor as he stepped into view, his flashlight beam catching the arsonists in the act of dousing file boxes. The men turned, startled but not deterred. One flicked a lighter, the flame dancing dangerously close to the fuel-soaked papers. "Back off, officer. This doesn't concern you." Cal advanced, but the lighter dropped. Flames erupted with a whoosh, catching quickly on the gasoline trail. The men scattered as smoke began to fill the narrow space. Cal grabbed his radio. "Rhea! Fire and records! They're burning the evidence! Rhea had been working late in the clinic, unable to leave knowing what Pike might do. At Cal's call, she sprinted toward the records room, pulling her scrub top over her nose against the thickening smoke. The heat hit her like a wall as she reached the doorway. Through the haze, she could see the flames climbing the metal shelving units, curling the edges of papers and files. The X-ray storage cabinet stood in the far corner, not yet touched by the fire but rapidly being engulfed in smoke. "Rhea, don't!" Cal shouted as she dove into the room. She could hear him calling in the fire department, but they both knew it would be too late for the evidence. The smoke burned her eyes and throat as she fought her way to the cabinet. Her fingers fumbled with the latch, finally wrenching it open. Stacks of X-ray plates clattered as she grabbed them, clutching them to her chest. The flames were spreading faster now, feeding on decades of paper records. The heat was intense, making it hard to think, hard to breathe. Rhea stumbled, disoriented by the smoke. A strong hand grabbed her arm, Cal pulling her toward the exit. They burst into the relative clarity of the hallway, both coughing violently. Through watering eyes, Rhea checked the X-ray plates. There they were, the damning images of Zinnia's double chips, along with others she hadn't even had time to examine. Physical proof of Griggs's systematic cruelty. Fire truck sirens wailed in the distance as Cal helped Rhea to her feet. "You're crazy. You know that?" he said, his voice rough with smoke and emotion. "Had to save them," she wheezed, still clutching the plates. "These aren't just X-rays. They're evidence. They're justice." The records room continued to burn behind them, but the most important evidence was safe. In her heart, Rhea knew this was the turning point. Griggs's desperate attempt to destroy the truth had only made their case stronger. The fight wasn't over, but now they had proof that couldn't be ignored. The smoke billowed thick and black through the shelter's corridors. As Rhea crawled on her hands and knees toward the records room, her eyes stung, and each breath felt like swallowing razor blades. The orange glow of flames cast dancing shadows on the walls, but she wouldn't leave without those X-rays. "Rhea!" Cal's voice echoed from somewhere behind her. "Get out of there!" She reached the filing cabinet, yanking open drawers with trembling hands. The metal was hot to the touch, but she forced herself to keep searching. Finally, her fingers closed around the large envelope containing Zinnia's X-rays and the other documented cases. The ceiling creaked ominously above her. Clutching the precious evidence to her chest, Rhea dropped back to her knees and began the desperate crawl toward the exit. The smoke was thicker now, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. A sharp crack split the air, and part of the ceiling collapsed behind her. The rush of heat against her back spurred her forward faster. Her lungs screamed for clean air as she followed the dim outline of the emergency exit sign. Suddenly, strong hands grabbed her shoulders, pulling her the final few feet. Cal dragged her out into the cool night air where she collapsed onto the grass, coughing violently. Through watery eyes, she saw him dash back inside. "Zinnia," she croaked, but no sound came out. Moments later, Cal emerged again, carrying the golden retriever mix in his arms. The puppy was trembling but unharmed. Fire trucks wailed in the distance as Rhea hugged the envelope of X-rays, her proof preserved despite Griggs's desperate attempt to destroy it. The next morning, Rhea sat in Sheriff Penn's office, still smelling of smoke despite having showered twice. The sheriff's weathered face was grim as he studied the X-rays spread across his desk. Beside him, Dr. Martha Chen, the state veterinary inspector, adjusted her glasses as she examined the evidence. "Double chipping," Dr. Chen said, shaking her head in disgust. "And deliberately placed to cause paralysis. This is beyond professional misconduct. It's criminal animal cruelty." Sheriff Penn leaned back in his chair. "The fire makes it attempted destruction of evidence. We've got enough here to bring some serious heat on Griggs." A knock at the door interrupted them. Dr. Pike stood in the doorway looking deflated and nervous. His usually pristine lab coat was rumpled, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. "I want to make a deal," he said quietly. Rhea started to object, but Cal placed a steadying hand on her shoulder. Sheriff Penn motioned for Pike to enter. "Talk fast," the sheriff said. Pike pulled a thick ledger from his briefcase. "Everything's in here. Dates, lot numbers, payments. Griggs has been running this operation for years. When puppies didn't meet his standards, they were marked as defective and disposed of. The second chip was insurance. If any survived and were traced back, he could claim they were stolen property." "And you helped him," Rhea accused. Pike's shoulders slumped. "He paid me to expedite euthanasia requests. No questions asked. I told myself it was just business, but—" He gestured to the ledger. "This is all of it. Every transaction, every cover-up. I'll testify." Sheriff Penn thumbed through the ledger, exchanging looks with Dr. Chen. "This changes things. We can do more than investigate. We can raid his facility today. He'll destroy evidence if he suspects anything," Cal warned. "Then we move now." The sheriff picked up his phone. "I'll have tactical units ready in an hour. Dr. Chen, can you coordinate with other state inspectors to document everything we find?" The veterinary inspector nodded firmly. "I'll have a full team standing by." Rhea hugged Zinnia closer, the puppy's presence a reminder of why they'd fought so hard. "What about us?" "We'll need you both to identify evidence, connect it to what you've already found," Dr. Chen explained. "But you'll stay back until the scene is secured." As they prepared to leave, Pike caught Rhea's arm. "I know it doesn't make up for anything, but I'm sorry, truly sorry." She looked at him for a long moment, seeing not the bureaucrat who'd tried to stop her, but a tired man finally choosing to do the right thing. "Help us make this right," she said simply. They gathered in the sheriff's department parking lot, watching as tactical units geared up. Rhea felt Cal's steady presence beside her as they waited for the signal to move out. The weight of the rescued X-rays in her bag and Pike's ledger in evidence reminded her how far they'd come from that first moment of defiance. Dr. Chen approached them, her clipboard ready. "This is going to be bigger than just Zinnia," she said. "Are you prepared for what we might find?" Rhea looked down at the healing puppy in her arms, then at Cal, who nodded his support. "We started this to save one life," she said. "Now we have a chance to save many more. We're ready." The sheriff's voice cut through the morning air. "All units in position. Operation is a go in 15 minutes. Everyone to your assigned vehicles." As they moved toward their designated car, Rhea felt a fierce determination replace her exhaustion. They had the evidence, the authorities, and most importantly, the truth on their side. Griggs's reign of cruelty was about to end. The annual Kentucky Breeders' Trophy Show buzzed with activity under the bright morning sun. Perfectly groomed dogs pranced around the manicured lawn while their handlers adjusted rhinestone collars and spritzed coat shine. At the center of it all stood Harlan Griggs, commanding attention in his crisp navy suit as he shook hands with fellow breeders and sponsors. The first sign something was wrong came when 3 black SUVs rolled into the parking area. Sheriff Penn stepped out, followed by state officers and animal control units. Cal emerged from one vehicle, his usually friendly face set in determined lines. The casual chatter around the show ring died as uniformed officials spread out across the grounds. Rhea watched from near the entrance, her heart pounding as Sheriff Penn approached Griggs. "Mr. Griggs," the sheriff's voice carried across the suddenly quiet showground. "We have a warrant to search these premises and seize evidence related to illegal breeding practices." Griggs's cultivated smile didn't waver. "This is ridiculous. You're disrupting a legitimate competition." But the sheriff was already unfolding official documents while officers moved in. The crowd of spectators and participants drew back, phones recording as animal control officers began checking chip numbers against their database. Teams of investigators headed for Griggs's mobile office trailer, emerging with boxes of records. "And hard drives! You can't do this!" Griggs snarled, his charm cracking. "My lawyers will—" "Your lawyers can take it up with the state attorney's office." Sheriff Penn cut him off. "Right now, you're going to step aside and let us do our jobs." For 3 hours, they methodically documented everything. Cal supervised. As officers found more double-chipped puppies in Griggs's show trailer, each one marked with the same damning Z code system. Rhea's heart ached as she helped examine the frightened animals, knowing how close they'd come to being disposed of for minor imperfections. The raid seemed like a complete success. Local news crews arrived, filming as boxes of evidence were loaded into vehicles. Rhea felt a surge of victory watching Griggs's carefully constructed facade crumble in front of his high society peers. But the triumph was short-lived. Within 24 hours, Griggs's legal team launched a blistering counteroffensive. They filed motions claiming the evidence was contaminated, arguing that Rhea and Cal had tampered with records during the shelter fire. They questioned the validity of Pike's testimony, painting him as a desperate man trying to save himself. Rhea sat in her small apartment, staring at the legal documents that had just been served. Griggs was suing her personally for $2 million, claiming defamation and business interference. The stack of papers felt like a physical weight crushing her chest. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Ames about Zinnia. The puppy's latest checkup had revealed complications. The surgical site was showing signs of infection, threatening the delicate repair work around her spine. They needed to start aggressive antibiotic treatment immediately. Rhea's hands shook as she called her bank. Between legal fees and mounting vet bills, her savings were nearly depleted. She'd already maxed out 2 credit cards trying to keep up with Zinnia's medical expenses. "I can work out a payment plan," Dr. Ames said gently when Rhea explained her situation. That puppy deserves a fighting chance. But it wasn't just about money anymore. Griggs's lawyers had frozen Rhea's assets as part of the lawsuit. Her car had been repossessed yesterday. The landlord was threatening eviction. Everything she'd worked for was slipping away. She looked at Zinnia, curled up in her bed. The puppies. Golden fur had lost some of its shine, and she wasn't eating well. The infection was taking its toll. When Zinnia tried to stand, her back legs trembled and gave out. "We're not giving up," Rhea whispered, gathering the warm little body in her arms. Zinnia's tail gave a weak wag as she licked Rhea's chin. "We've come too far to let him win now." But sitting there in her darkening apartment, watching Zinnia struggle to find a comfortable position, Rhea felt the weight of hopelessness pressing in. The raid that should have brought justice had instead unleashed a legal nightmare. Her evidence was being picked apart by expensive lawyers. Her reputation was being destroyed in the press. Cal called to check on her, his voice heavy with concern. "The department's under pressure, too. They're talking about suspending me pending an investigation." "I'm so sorry," Rhea said, fighting back tears. "I never meant to drag you into this." "Hey, we did the right thing," Cal insisted. "Sometimes doing right comes with a cost." But the cost felt overwhelming. As night fell, Rhea held her feverish. Puppy close, listening to Zinnia's labored breathing. The infection was getting worse despite the medications. The surgery that had given them such hope now seemed like just another cruel twist in their journey. She thought about all the other dogs still in Griggs's kennels, about the corrupt system that protected men like him. They had proof, photographs, X-rays, testimony, but somehow money and influence were turning truth into lies, justice into persecution. Zinnia whimpered in her sleep, and Rhea stroked her head softly. "We have to keep fighting," she whispered, even as her own voice shook with uncertainty. "We have to." But in the quiet darkness of her apartment, with unpaid bills piled on her counter and legal threats hanging over her head, victory had never felt further away. The raid that should have been their moment of triumph had instead become the beginning of their darkest chapter. Rhea sat alone in her small apartment, the weight of defeat pressing down on her shoulders. Her savings were drained from Griggs's lawsuit, and her career hung by a thread. On her kitchen table lay the smoke-damaged X-ray plate she'd rescued from the shelter fire, its edges charred and warped from the heat. She picked up the plate with trembling hands, holding it up to her desk lamp one last time. The familiar outline of Zinnia's spine glowed against the light, the two chips standing out like stark accusations. Tears blurred her vision as she thought of the puppy, now fighting, a dangerous infection at Dr. Ames's clinic. "What am I missing?" she whispered, turning the plate slowly. The main chip sat properly positioned in the shoulder area, but something about the rogue chip near the spine caught her attention. She squinted, leaning closer. There, in the glass casing surrounding the microchip, was a distinctive swirl pattern. Like a tiny fingerprint in the manufacturing process, she'd never noticed it before, too focused on the chip's dangerous position. Her heart began to race. Rhea grabbed her phone, dialing Cal with shaking fingers. "Can you come over? I found something." Within 30 minutes, Cal arrived, still in, his animal control uniform from his shift. His weathered face showed concern as he sat at her kitchen table. "What have you got? Look at this." Rhea positioned the X-ray carefully. "See that swirl pattern in the glass around the chip? It's like a manufacturing signature." Cal leaned in, his dark eyes narrowing. "Pike's ledger mentioned something about special orders from a single supplier." They spread Pike's documentation across the table. The former shelter director had kept meticulous records of every kickback and covered-up euthanasia. There, in the margins of one page, was a note about custom encapsulation for Griggs's exclusive use. "This could be it," Rhea breathed. "The link we needed. These aren't random chips. They're specially made for his operation." Cal pulled out his phone, thumbing through files until he found what he was looking for. "Remember last week when I went to question Griggs's kennel staff? I left my phone recording in my pocket." He pressed play. Griggs's smooth voice filled the small kitchen. "Z-lots are business expenses, nothing more. You think anyone cares about cold stock? That bleeding heart tech is destroying herself for nothing." Rhea's hands clenched into fists. "He's talking about Zinnia, about all of them." "And admitting to systematic culling," Cal added, his voice hard. "Combined with Pike's records and this chip pattern, we can prove every double-chipped puppy came from his kennel," Rhea finished. "No more hiding behind lawyers and claiming isolated incidents." They worked through the night, organizing their evidence. Pike's ledger provided dates and numbers. Cal's recording captured Griggs's callous admission of the Z-lot system, and the X-ray plate, with its telltale swirl pattern, tied everything together with physical proof. By morning, exhausted but energized, they had assembled a comprehensive case file. Rhea called their legal aid attorney, voice steady for the first time in weeks. "We're ready. We can prove everything." The attorney arrived that afternoon, poring over their findings with growing enthusiasm. "This is what we needed," she confirmed. "The chip pattern is our smoking gun. It shows premeditation, systematic abuse, and direct connection to Griggs's operation." As they prepared for the coming legal battle, Rhea felt something she hadn't experienced since finding Zinnia. Hope. Real, substantial hope backed by evidence that even Griggs's expensive lawyers couldn't dismiss. "All those puppies," she said softly to Cal as they left the attorney's office. "All those lives he treated like garbage. They deserve justice." Cal squeezed her shoulder, his quiet strength supporting her as it had since the beginning. "They'll get it, thanks to you not giving up." The tide had turned. Their case was airtight, built on physical evidence, financial records, and Griggs's own words. As they prepared for the courtroom confrontation, Rhea thought of Zinnia fighting for her life at Dr. Ames's clinic. One puppy's struggle had exposed a system of cruelty, and now that system would finally face judgment. The next morning, Rhea visited Zinnia before heading to meet their attorney. The puppy's tail wagged weakly, but her eyes still held that determined spark that had first made Rhea fight for her life. "We're going to win," she promised, gently stroking Zinnia's head. "For all of you." The courtroom hummed with tension as Rhea took her seat in the witness stand. Her heart pounded, but her voice remained steady as she faced the sea of faces before her. Harlan Griggs sat at the defense table, his silver hair perfectly styled, his expensive suit a stark contrast to Rhea's simple blouse and slacks. "Ms. Cullum," the prosecutor began, "please tell the court about the day you first met the puppy known as Z1. Rhea drew a deep breath. "She came in a crate, barely moving. Dr. Pike ordered me to prep her for euthanasia immediately." Her voice grew stronger as she continued. "But when I looked into her eyes, I saw something everyone else had missed. A spark of life, a will to survive. And what made you defy protocol that day? Because that puppy wasn't just a number or a ledger code. She was a living being who deserved a chance." Rhea's gaze met Griggs's cold stare. The X-ray revealed why she couldn't walk. A second microchip deliberately placed near her spine. That's when we discovered the truth about the Z-lots. The evidence mounted as the trial proceeded. Cal's recorded conversation with Griggs played through the courtroom speakers. "Those Z-lots? Just write them off. Cheaper than trying to fix defects." Griggs's face darkened as his own words condemned him. Dr. Pike's testimony proved crucial. Though visibly nervous, he detailed years of kickbacks and covered-up euthanasia records. "Mr. Griggs paid me to keep quiet," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper, "to destroy evidence of the double-chipping program." The jury deliberated for just 3 hours. When they returned, the forewoman stood tall. "On the charges of animal cruelty and fraud, we find the defendant, Harlan Griggs, guilty on all counts." Relief flooded through Rhea as Griggs was led away in handcuffs. His empire of cruelty had finally crumbled. Dr. Pike lost his veterinary license, but his cooperation helped ensure justice was served. Months passed, and healing took root. At Dr. Ames's clinic, Rhea watched as Zinnia, now recovered from her infection, struggled to stand. The golden retriever mix had grown stronger, her determination matching the spark Rhea had seen that first day. "Come on, girl," Rhea encouraged, kneeling a few feet away. "You can do it." Zinnia's legs trembled as she pushed herself up, one wobbly step forward, then another. Cal stood nearby, holding his breath. The puppy's confidence grew with each movement until suddenly she was walking, really walking, straight into Rhea's waiting arms. "That's my girl," Rhea cried, burying her face in Zinnia's soft fur. Tears of joy rolled down her cheeks as the puppy covered her face with enthusiastic kisses. Cal approached, holding out a folder. "Speaking of good news," he said with a warm smile, "the adoption papers are final. Zinnia's officially ours. If you want to be part of that, ours." Rhea looked up at him, seeing the same steadfast strength that had supported her through their darkest days. "Are you asking what I think you're asking?" Well, Cal knelt beside them, one hand scratching behind Zinnia's ears. "I figure we make a pretty good team. You, me, and this miracle puppy who brought us together. What do you say?" Rhea's answer came in the form of a kiss, while Zinnia wiggled happily between them. What had begun as a desperate act of defiance had transformed into something beautiful. Justice served, lives saved, and love found in the most unexpected places. As they left the clinic together, Zinnia trotting proudly between them, Rhea realized that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest choices. Her decision to see value in one small life had rippled outward, bringing down corruption and creating a future brighter than she'd ever imagined. Zinnia's tail wagged as she walked confidently beside them, no longer the paralyzed puppy marked for destruction, but living proof that compassion and courage could change the world, one heart at a time. If today's story echoed in your heart, I hope you'll stay. Subscribe, and I'll be here again tomorrow with another quiet story, full of the kind of love that lasts.